Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on Winsight Live. Before I have to depart for a webinar that's beginning right after this broadcast on the digital maturity study from Incisive, you can join us there at winsightgrocerybusiness.com/webinars. A couple of stories out of the sort of mountain of news that have come in to our desk over the last just couple of days. Let's begin talking about Amazon and a new supply agreement with SpartanNash. The Midwest distributor says that it has a 7-year agreement to extend a relationship with Amazon that they started for the first time in 2016, which contemplates Amazon buying $8 billion worth of groceries over the life of that contract. And in addition, getting stock warrants through which they can acquire up to 14% of this company for less than $100 million. This is with Amazon is on a verge of a major grocery expansion in the US in physical stores, and has obviously gotten stronger with pandemic e-commerce talents. This is a really big moment for SpartanNash and the industry as a whole. Speaking of Amazon, last week there was also Vox Media's Code Commerce event, an excellent interview with Stephanie Landry, Amazon's VP of Grocery, which I listened into and kind of wrote up Stephanie's viewpoint on sort of why Amazon is kind of getting into grocery now, which is really interesting. Her take, we're bringing a quality experience that is not out there yet, Phil.
So, John, what's so interesting to me about this SpartanNash situation, I could be overthinking this. I believe that what Amazon is going to do is obviously they're going to learn a lot from SpartanNash. They're eventually going to buy all of SpartanNash, and that they're going to convert the 155 stores that SpartanNash currently owns and operates themselves into Amazon Fresh. This, for me, is the leapfrog to go from the one Amazon Fresh store here in Woodland Hills, California, to fast track it and maybe even take some of the owners similar. It's almost the model of Wakefern with ShopRite, that everything is called ShopRite, that maybe all of their 2,000 stores that they service become, Amazon Fresh stores, become more profitable. I think that this is huge, not only as an investment, if you would, for SpartanNash, but also to go further than that. That's just my take. That's just my thinking. I know nothing more about it. No crystal ball here. But when I heard that, I said, this is really a smart move. I want to change topics a little bit, and Pat and Jen are going to appreciate this. There's a new Washington State University research report that found that on average, men showed less empathy towards the pandemic, towards those things that have been happening during the pandemic, and women care more about both the workers on the farm being shut down, businesses being shut down, and so on. So we men around the table here, we're not doing nearly as well. So Jen, let's stay on the topic of Amazon for a second, and let's talk about the ideal market.
So Ideal Market opened last week, and it's only Whole Foods' second such store. That the original Ideal Market is in Boulder, and it was part of Whole Foods' acquisition of Wild Oats Market back in 2007. So there was a lot of anticipation about this particular location because it used to be a Whole Foods in Denver, and then they closed in 2017. Because they said to focus on their flagship store downtown. So it was just, a vacant building for these past few years. And then we saw, it was going to be an Ideal Market. So it was an interesting choice, rather than making it another Whole Foods Market, to do this different branding. So I went on opening day to check it out. I mean, it's just in terms of the shopping experience, it's light years from the previous Whole Foods that was there. It was kind of an older, I felt like kind of run down location. And this is like light and bright and airy and, you know, huge focus on prepared foods. You know, they have all these signs, you know, foods, meals for a family, meals for two, you know, it's single serve, you know, heavy in the grab and go prepared food space. And then there's also a prepared foods counter where you can come up and, you know, order like a protein with two sides, like a meal deal kind of a thing. There's pizza. There's an in-house bakery that's making from scratch, you know, breads every day using locally milled flour, which is something that I hadn't seen promoted before. And then there's also this whole beauty section. And I've really seen with all of Whole Foods new stores, including Ideal Market, that they're going big into the wellness and beauty sector. And I'm actually working on a story with them right now on that subject to just kind of learn more about their expansion plans. But the beauty bar is like, I mean, it's almost like a, you know, it's definitely like a store within a store, but it's this really cute boutique in the middle of a grocery store, you know, which I haven't seen quite that treatment of before. But that said, you know, I was impressed, but my boyfriend who lives in that neighborhood and was a loyal shopper to the original Whole Foods, you know, had a totally different take. And he thought, you know, the prices were too high. He thought the focus on grab and go was too extensive. And then he was like, and then that whole beauty section, like, what do you even need that for? That's a total waste of space. So, you know, you can't please everyone.
So Jen, I guess my question, and I'd love to hear your insight. Why come up with yet another format, yet another banner, instead of why didn't they just make it Amazon Fresh?
Right. Well, I think that this is part of their marketing strategy. You know, I really, that the neighborhood where the new Ideal Market is, you know, very much more of a, you know, a hipster kind of, you know, there's multi-unit buildings and single family homes, but it's much more of a, you know, of an urban vibe there. And I think that they're really, you know, that there's kind of a, I know the Ideal Market sign looks kind of retro. And then there's also a tap room in the Ideal Market Whole Foods that, you know, wasn't there before. I mean, it's appealing to, I think, a younger urban crowd. And I think that it's just yet another, it's a marketing tool to, you know, to appeal to that kind of urban dweller with something kind of hip and cool.
So John, you're in New York City. Does this store sound hip and cool for New York City? Should Ideal Market come to New York City? First of all, and this is personal opinion, I hate the name. I think Ideal Market is a horrible name. John, what's your take?
Well, you know, I mean, when Jen was describing the store, she could have been describing any of the Whole Foods markets in, you know, Brooklyn. You know, we used to work right upstairs from their one in Williamsburg. You know, had a tap room at one time. Very much a hipster influenced neighborhood on that store. But I can see where maybe a smaller scale type of thing would work a little bit better in a neighborhood like that, given that, you know, the Whole Foods might generally work better on larger baskets and some of these other, you know, kind of metrics that, you know, Whole Foods has been trying to do, you know, more volumes and everything else. And maybe a specialty market that would be a little bit better at that meal at a time kind of idea might be better in certain markets. I mean, I think in the case of Ideal Market, this is obviously borrowing from some of the authenticity that, you know, the original site had and kind of porting it over. But it is interesting to see Whole Foods, Amazon, which is now, you know, they tried and gave up on the Whole Foods 365 thing and you know, just trying another thing, maybe that this is the sort of right, you know, expression for this particular neighborhood, and retailers all need to get better at doing things locally.
And, you know, maybe we give Amazon too much credit. I remember the 365's store format here in Los Angeles, and it was terrible. I mean, it really was. It really wasn't done well. Whole Foods hasn't done that well. If we take a look at, you know, their store traffic obviously have gone down, but if you look at their increase in revenue, it's about half of what all the other retailers are reporting during the pandemic. Maybe we think that Amazon is a lot smarter than they really are, and they just keep on throwing these things against the wall to see what's going to stick.
It's possible, Bill. I mean, you know, Whole Foods was a little bit less able to sort of kind of benefit from that huge influx of traffic that the regular grocers did. You know, one, the density of those stores and places close to home was a big deal. You know, the relationships with the CPG suppliers and kind of this idea of a regular well-known brands and everything else that the supermarkets specialize in, you know, sort of definitely help their cause a little bit more maybe than Whole Foods. And of course, Whole Foods business, which looks like it's going down if you look at the sales that come out of the store, Amazon doesn't count that as part of store sales, but rather as part of this enormously growing internet sales. And it's really difficult to parse that information out unless you know the particular location, and you go into a store and you're outnumbered by the prime shoppers that are carrying out these orders for home delivery.
So Jen, you mentioned that your boyfriend thought it was more expensive. I thought that the premise of Ideal was to be less expensive than Whole Foods and be at parity at the average Kroger and Albertsons. Did you find that?
No, I thought the prices were high. I mean, there were some things that, I would, considerably higher than a Safeway or, Kroger here. So my boyfriend's take was that, why would I spend like X amount of dollars to create a meal with, I buy a protein and then a couple of sides, and like I could spend that at a restaurant and get a restaurant quality meal, it's like, so, and he also felt that the produce department was smaller than it was in the previous store. And then said like, his priorities are, he was saying like, I like to pick out my, my green beans one at a time and inspect each one. And I'm like, well, I don't think that you're the future of grocery and who their target market.
So we also have an interesting comment on Facebook from Joan, who's basically asking, are the additional banners an attempt to skirt antitrust laws? Which is an interesting thought as well. So enough on Amazon. Pat, let's talk about what restaurants are doing with the upcoming election. I guess it's now just like 21 days away, depending on where you are and how early you can vote.
Yeah, just 3 weeks from today. So one operator is taking kind of like a irreverent view of it, and it's Westtown Bakery in Chicago, and he created smash cakes that have like really unflattering images of Mike Pence and Donald Trump on the cake. So that if people get frustrated with the results, they can smash the cake. But he's also, no, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No.
So we thought that was really funny. My colleague Heather Lally actually wrote the story, and I thought she had some really good examples. But other operators are taking a more serious, like bipartisan approach. They just want to encourage their employees to go out and vote. So Westtown Bakery is also closing its locations for a couple of hours on election day so that they can, their employees can have time to vote. But other operators like And Pizza, which is kind of a progressive concept in Washington, D.C., they started the whole process with a portal so their employees could register to vote on the portal. And then they're giving them paid time off to vote on election day. The same with Chipotle and Noodles and Company. It's not as generous an amount of time, but they're also doing that. And then Starbucks announced a partnership with Lyft. So it's giving all its employees a free one-way ride up to $75 to go and vote. Wow. I don't know where they're voting for $75. That's pretty far away, but
Well,
They can drop
it depends. Certainly in Texas, you're going to need that $75. That's a really cool idea. I guess here in California, and you've probably heard, but what's been happening is we don't know who, so I'm not going to blame anybody, but there's been these fake ballot boxes being put up all over the place, that people are going in and they don't want to mail in their ballot because they think about mail fraud. What they do want to do is they fill out their ballot at home, then they go to one of these boxes and they put it in, but it's a fake box. So it's getting weirder and weirder. Let's get back to non-weird, and talk about Chicago. And Brett, head to you on what's going on with C-stores with delivery. Any update?
Sure. So this is kind of a holistic view of delivery and curbside pickup, but some recent numbers that have come in that are really just emphasizing how important it is to offer delivery and curbside pickup and mobile capabilities right now. So according to a new study from research firm Incisive, which we saw last week, about 80% of consumers, and I believe that goes across most outlets, whether it's retail, restaurants, grocery, like you name it. About 8% of consumers expect to increase buy online and pickup and curbside pickup options over the next 6 months, which is big. And then 90% also said they prefer home delivery compared to in-store visits, which is massive, especially for convenience stores, which their bread and butter is getting people inside. And beyond that, 85% of consumers that they have significantly increased curbside pickup orders compared to the pre-pandemic world. And then finally, almost 80% again said contactless store pickup is really important to them. So obviously, I sound like a broken record because I feel like we're repeating this almost every time we get on here. But
Right.
For retailers who haven't started offering these yet, you have to. It is so important to bring these in. Since April, at least in the convenience store world, we've seen chains like Casey's, Cumberland Farms, Quick Check, Wawa, among many others, start to launch these operations in their stores, And for all we know, many of them have had a successful run with these. But it's just, again, it's the drum that continues to beat. Just you gotta implement these in your operations, or else you're gonna fall behind.
So, Brett, how does the C-store have to change as a result of this? C-stores, for the most part, are small. They don't have big back rooms. When we start to look at increasing delivery and increasing curbside pickup and so on, are the C-stores going to have to add more room, more space for that back room? Are they going to get into micro fulfillment? Are there going to be robots that we're starting to see supermarkets having? Is it going to be forced to be a bigger footprint?
So I don't think the need for delivery and curbside pickup and these mobile capabilities is going to really affect the footprint of the store. I think more than anything, from a labor standpoint, operators are going to need more people on their teams to really help provide these services. If you're improving your mobile app, you need someone to run that operation. If you're offering delivery, if you're not maybe going through a third party, because I've spoken to some operators who have had poor experiences with those and they want to maybe offer delivery on their own terms, you need delivery drivers. You're going to need people for curbside operations to bring the food or bring whatever it is you're ordering out to the car. So I think more than anything, it's a big labor problem. And I spoke about this in previous feeds. The C-store industry is struggling mightily with labor right now. So I think more than anything, it's that. In terms of the actual store, I don't think much will change. The convenience store industry, it is, I don't want to say old school, but it's consumers, are not as always like up to date and as more modern as, let's say, restaurants. They have tried and true customers, especially more local mom and pop, more smaller independent. They have their customers who come in daily, who come in weekly, order the same thing, know the name of the cashier, so those brands, it won't really affect them as much. But for those bigger chains, it's a big labor thing, I think, more than anything.
So are they going to be able to financially stay in business with that labor increase, or are they going to have to raise prices, or how are they going to pay for all this extra labor?
It's a great question. If I had the answer, I'd probably be a C-store consultant.
So with that, let's turn it over to Jen to wrap us up and give us some good news.
Yes, so we talk about these folks all the time because they're always giving back, but HEB has just announced that over the holiday season, through its HEB Feast of Sharing program, is going to donate over 340,000 meals to food banks and hunger relief organizations like Meals on Wheels. And this will be both, they're supported, of the 340,000 meals is both financially and in terms of also donating food to these organizations.
That's great. HEB gets a thumbs up all the time from me, but doing that, and also especially going into the holiday season, a lot of these retailers and a lot of food banks were working together because the supply chain was broken. We were dumping milk. We had to dump crops and so on. Well, that part of the supply chain has now been, pretty much put back together again. So there's probably even more of a need this holiday season for folks like HEB and other retailers to work with the food bank. So very cool.
For sure.
Very cool. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining us. Check out John, on the other side of this webcast for a webinar all about technology. And check out on Restaurant Business, Winsight Grocery Business, CSP, Supermarket Guru, all of our Facebook pages for previous episodes of Winsight Live. And in the meantime, be safe. Join us on Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific, and wear a mask.